I never thought my own birthday would be the perfect stage for a public betrayal, the kind you can't forget even if you try. The afternoon sun caressed the hydrangeas I had planted myself decades ago in the backyard of my house. Yes, I still call it that, even though it's in my daughter's name now. The tables were decorated with dried flowers and scented candles. According to her, it was a party with love for the best mom in the world. How ironic. They had seated me in a white, vintage-style chair next to a diffuser releasing the scent of eucalyptus. Everything was set up to make me look like a queen or a relic. All the guests were Cora's friends, her followers, with cameras ready to document every moment. I, the 80-year-old widowed mother, a former art teacher, was now just part of the decor. Izolda, can you show me that photo of you and Grandpa painting in the garden? My granddaughter, Faye, asked me with a sweetness they haven't yet managed to stamp out of her. I didn't have my phone. Mine had run out of battery. So I borrowed one from one of Cora's assistants. A shiny device, without a case, with the gloss of borrowed things. I searched for Instagram, and that's where I saw a recently published story. The background was a photo of me in my straw hat, sitting next to the embroidered tablecloth Rowena gave me. Above it, a text in white letters, "Her face makes me sick. I hate her and she doesn't even know it's her fault." The woman who had written that was my daughter. My fingers trembled. I closed the screen as if I could erase the blow, but no, the blow had already landed. It felt like falling down a stone staircase, not because of the physical pain, but because of the humiliation of having trusted. "Is everything all right, Izolda?" the girl with the phone asked me with an automatic smile. "Perfectly, my dear," I replied. "I was just looking for an old recipe." I lied, because at that moment I couldn't do anything else. I looked around. Cora was posing next to a dessert table without touching anything. She had ordered a multi-tiered white cake, sugar-free, flour-free, soul-free. And there she was, feigning a tenderness she didn't possess, surrounded by cameras, her voice soft and false like scratchy velvet. For me, wellness is about honoring those who shaped me. My mother, for example, she is the root of everything I am. Really? I touched the locket I always wear around my neck. Inside is an old photo, Cora as a child, painting beside me. She was 5 years old and said she wanted to be just like me. How far away that seemed now. While everyone applauded, I got up from my chair. No one noticed. I walked to the kitchen, closed the door, and stood there, leaning against the sink. The window let in the afternoon light, and in the glass I saw my reflection, the face of a woman who, for the first time in a long time, knew with certainty that something had broken. My daughter hated me. Not for something I did, but for who I am. And then I knew. This wasn't a slip-up, not a phrase said in a bad moment. It was a truth carefully hidden until it escaped between filters and catchphrases. I returned to the garden as if nothing had happened. I took a glass of kombucha that someone offered me. I smiled, I nodded, I played my part, because it wasn't the right time yet, but I had already made a decision. That message would not go unanswered. Not with words, not with tears, but with something much simpler: silence and strategy. Because if she thought I was just a weak, confused old woman, she was about to discover just how badly she had miscalculated. And by the time she did, it would be too late. Before the cameras, the green smoothies, and the empty self-help phrases entered her life, Cora used to be a little girl with paint-stained hands and a face full of questions. I remember one afternoon in particular, the kind that sticks to your soul. We had an old tablecloth spread out on the garden grass. I had prepared a mix of acrylics for my Monday class, but Cora, barely 6 years old, settled beside me in her blue apron with a paintbrush in hand. "Mom, I want to be like you," she said without looking at me, concentrating on drawing a crooked tree with enormous branches. "An art teacher?" I asked, smiling. She shook her head. "No. I want to have your hands, so steady, so good." I fell silent, because how do you respond to something like that without breaking a little inside? I took her hand gently and said, "My hands only know what they know because they've made mistakes, my child." She looked at me as if I had told her a secret of the universe, and then, without another word, she began to imitate my movements. "Every stroke of mine," she replicated. If I used red, so did she. If I mixed blue with white, She did the same. That was Cora before the fame, before personal branding, before she learned to fake passion in front of a camera. There was one summer when we turned that garden into a world of color. We hung canvases on the trees, painted stones, and even decorated the fence with phrases she made up herself. A girl who loves to paint lives here. Don't step on the grass, it's dreaming. Every week she chose a new theme. One time it was round things, another, things that move. She asked me everything. How do you make pink? Why does yellow shine more on fabric than on paper? Do clouds have edges? And I answered her with the patience of someone who knows they are planting something precious. But nothing grows forever, does it? Adolescence arrived with long silences and glances over her shoulder. She didn't want to paint with me anymore. Now she wanted a phone, a full-length mirror, and eventually, a social media account. I remember the day she took down all the pictures of us from her room. She said they no longer matched her new style. It hurt, but a mother understands, or convinces herself that she understands. The last time we painted together was on her 15th birthday. I had prepared a surprise for her, a private class with a local artist she greatly admired. I bought her new brushes, a box of oil paints, and a portable easel. She opened it, looked at everything, and smiled. But it was a half-hearted smile. "Thanks, Mom," she said in a flat tone. "But I don't paint anymore." And that I don't paint anymore wasn't just about art, it was about us. Still, I kept the easel. It's in the shed, wrapped in a blanket. No one has touched it since, because no matter how much she has changed, I don't forget. I don't forget her first watercolors, nor her laughter under the sun, nor the way she used to say, "Mom," as if it were a sacred word. And that's the cruelest part of all this, that the same little girl who looked at me as her role model now posts that I make her sick. How is that love lost? Does it evaporate? Is it sold? I don't know. What I do know is that little girl is still in there, deep inside Cora, buried under layers of filters, empty speeches, and anonymous followers. And if she ever wants to find her, she'll have to search among the ruins of what she destroyed. But I am no longer going to help her dig.it was my 80th birthday, but I felt like a museum piece, carefully placed for everyone to see but no one to touch. Cora organized the party with love in her words. She even designed a hashtag Vidal Birthday Bash. It sounded more like a marketing event than a family celebration. The garden had fairy lights, linen blankets, and infusion stations with pretentious names, citrus serenity, ancestral vitality. None of it tasted like home. They sat me on a kind of cushioned throne, next to a decorative fountain. They say water is relaxing. It just made me want to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Around me, people talked, but not to me. They discussed their keto diets, their spiritual retreat in Tulum, their favorite podcasts. One even mentioned he had given up gluten and his toxic mother. Everyone laughed. I did too, out of reflex. Cora, dressed in white linen and stone necklaces, moved from group to group like a queen bee, always smiling, always perfect. Every now and then, she would point at me from a distance, as if I were part of the scenery. "That's my mom, the inspiration behind all of this," she'd say. And then she would continue her rounds, leaving a trail of essential oil and motivational phrases in her wake. I smoothed the tablecloth on my lap, one I had embroidered myself years ago. No one commented on it. Sometimes I wonder if anyone notices those things. Faye, my granddaughter, sat beside me for a while. At least she still sees me. I offered her an oatmeal cookie, but she said she had already eaten something more photogenic. Photogenic. I repeated, confused. Yes, Grandma. Food that looks good in pictures. It's for the content. The content. I fell silent. At this party, the image was more important than the substance. One of Cora's friends approached with his phone. "Mrs. Izolda, do you mind if we record a short video? Just say something about gratitude. Make it look authentic." Yes, I nodded. Because that's what they expected. "I'm grateful to still be here," I said, looking directly at the camera. The young man's smile was fleeting. He was already thinking about the next clip. Not a hug, not a shared laugh, not one of the stories I once told about my days as a teacher. No one asked me about my latest painting or my hip pain or even my favorite kind of cake. It was carrot. It has always been carrot. Everything was a facade. A facade where I was the antique vase that adds prestige, but gets in the way if you put it too close. And the worst part is, I started to feel like maybe they were right. What if I have nothing left to contribute? What if I'm only good for showing resilience, as Cora said in one of her videos, but then Faye took my hand with that mix of tenderness and resistance that sometimes hides in the young. "Grandma, do you want to go for a walk?" she whispered. "No, my love," I told her. "Not yet." Because I needed to see just how far they were willing to go. That day, I learned something. Loneliness doesn't always arrive on dark nights or in empty houses. Sometimes it arrives in your own garden, surrounded by people who no longer listen to you. The first time she called me confused in front of her friends, I thought it was a joke, one of those said with affection. Like when you laugh because your mother repeats her stories. "Don't repeat yourself, Mom," she told me with a tight smile. "You look more confused when you talk a lot." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I felt the blood rush to my cheeks as if I were 15 again and had been ridiculed in front of the whole class. But this time it wasn't a mocking teacher, it was my daughter. I stayed quiet. She turned the camera on me because, of course, everything had to be recorded. Authentic content, as she likes to say. The video went on her social media, with background music and funny subtitles. "When mom gets intense with her art stories faced with tears of joy, #confused mom, #family humor." Humor? Rowena, my friend from the book club, mentioned it to me days later. "Izolda, I saw that video. Did it bother you?" "Because it made me angry." "No, it's nothing," I lied. "It's just part of her job." But it was something. The jokes were becoming constant. The way she spoke to me was like someone who doesn't want to hurt you, but doesn't bother to avoid it either. One day, while they were making smoothies live, as if blending fruit were a spiritual experience, they asked me to try one. I did. It tasted like dirt and mint. I made a doubtful face. "Is it good, Mom?" Cora asked with the microphone on. "It's different." She laughed. Everyone laughed. My mom prefers the classics. Coffee with milk, bread with butter. You know, the things that cause inflammation. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even fully understand what she was implying, but I knew it wasn't a compliment. That night, I made myself a chamomile tea, as I have since I was young. I labeled the jar years ago, "Calm for difficult nights." I drank it slowly, in silence, still hearing the laughter in the background, like an echo. Another day, while we were having lunch with her creative team, I told them that Cora, as a child, used to make up stories with crayons. She even once wrote me a story about a giraffe that played the violin. I narrated it tenderly. I've always loved remembering her inventions. "Oh, Mom, please," she interrupted. "Don't start with the old stories again. Everyone here already knows them by heart." "I didn't know it," someone said timidly. "Well, now you do," Cora declared without looking at me. The table fell silent for a second. Then, they went on talking about algorithms and sponsorships. I just stared at the vase in the center. The flowers were artificial, beautiful, perfect, and soulless. When did this start? When did my voice become a nuisance? Maybe it was always there, that small, almost invisible contempt that you ignore because it comes wrapped in smiles. Like when a stain appears on the wall and you decide not to see it. You cover it with a painting, then another, until one day there's no more space to hang anything, and the dampness starts to smell. That's what I felt now, that something about me already smelled old to her. Not old in age, but old as in bothersome. And if I hadn't realized it before, it was because I didn't want to see it. But now I saw it clearly. The signs weren't small. I was the one who had made myself small to not make noise. The day I gave her my engagement ring, Cora cried. She cried hard, like when she was a child and was afraid of thunder. "It's just a loan, Mom." "I swear." I nodded, although inside I already knew that ring wasn't coming back. It was an antique piece, white gold, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Vincent gave it to me on a rainy day in front of a museum in Florence. "It's not expensive, but it's eternal," he told me with that smile of his, half shy, half proud. I kept it for years like a small treasure. I only took it off to wash my brushes or knead bread. And when Vincent died, I started twisting it between my fingers whenever I needed comfort. It was my habit, my anchor, until Cora came with her proposal. Mom, I have a vision. A wellness center, workshops, products, content. But I'm missing the initial capital. I don't want bank loans. I want to start clean, with intention. I hesitated. Could you sell the ring? She suggested. Just for now. When the business grows, I'll buy it back for you. The exact same one. I didn't think about it much. The truth is, a mother rarely thinks much when she believes she's saving her daughter. All right, I told her. We took it together to a jewelry store in Bristol. The clerk inspected it with white gloves. He talked about purity, cut, history. I just watched it shine for the last time under that artificial light. They gave us the check right there. Cora held it as if it were a ticket to her destiny. She hugged me tightly, and in her voice, there was a thank you that seemed sincere at the time. You're investing in me, Mom. I won't forget it. But she did forget, little by little. First, it was the mom. You can't come to the workshop today. There's a private session. Then this event is too young for you. Then silence. The ring never came back, and I never asked for it. Why? How does a mother demand something back from her daughter for choosing her own path? Sometimes, when I drank my nightly tea, I would still twist my empty finger out of reflex. The invisible gap told me more than any jewel. Something was here. A gesture, a sacrifice, an act of faith. Cora's wellness center prospered. Of course it did. Now it has 3 locations, sponsorships, and a registered trademark. In interviews, she says it all started with a push from the universe and a lot of family love. She never mentions the ring. The last time I saw it was in a photo. An influencer was wearing it as part of a collaboration with her brand. A blue sapphire mounted on a gold chain with the tag Ancestral Vibe. Ancestral Vibe? As if a mother's love could be reduced to a vibe. As if the past could be worn as an accessory. Rowena, who noticed it in the photo before I did, was the one who showed it to me. That's your ring, Izolda. I just nodded. Then I went out to the garden. I took a deep breath. I touched the locket pendant, the only thing I never gave her, and that's when I decided. Love isn't demanded back, but respect is. And if Cora didn't know the difference, I was going to teach it to her. With actions, without scandals, without pleas. One last lesson. The most important one. I wasn't going to eavesdrop, really. I just went into the kitchen for some water. The door was ajar, and Cora was speaking in a low voice, that fake whisper you use when you don't want someone to hear, but you also don't really care if they do. I use her because she projects a good image, she was saying. People love the narrative of a daughter taking care of her elderly mother. It's very clickable. Her friend, a woman with a high-pitched voice and a shrill laugh, let out a cackle. And with that face, she's perfect. She looks so fragile, like something out of a sad novel. Exactly, Cora laughed. But in person, ugh, she stinks, literally. She has that smell of old cream and mustiness. Did you notice she labels her jars? A relic from another era. The blood roared in my ears. I stood there, paralyzed, the glass still in my hand. And how do you stand it? The friend asked. I couldn't. My mom criticizes me all the time, and I've already blocked her everywhere. Mine doesn't even criticize, she's just there. Like an emotional coat rack. But don't worry, I'm already figuring out how to push her away without it being obvious. A nursing home? No, something softer. Maybe I'll suggest a retreat for older women with activities, make it seem like her choice. The laughter of both filled the kitchen. It was the kind of laughter that doesn't just hurt, it also empties you from the inside. I didn't move, I didn't make a sound, because in that instant, I knew something I didn't want to know but had always been there. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it wasn't stress, it was contempt, and it was well-polished, planned, strategic. She no longer saw me as her mother, she saw me as a liability that tarnished her personal brand. I retreated in silence, walking back down the hallway like a shadow. I went up to my room and closed the door carefully. I didn't cry. Not yet. First, I sat in front of the mirror, that antique mirror with a wrought iron frame that Vincent and I bought on a trip. I looked at myself, I saw my slightly sunken eyes, the deep wrinkles, the fine hair pulled back in a low bun. And yet, I also saw the woman who taught art history for 30 years, who raised her daughter alone after being widowed, who painted community murals, gave free workshops, and held on with trembling hands through every birthday, every fall, every new beginning. And now I was an aesthetic nuisance. I calmly took off my earrings, undid my bun, took a deep breath, and once again twisted the locket between my fingers. My usual gesture, my anchor, because I needed to remember. I wasn't a victim. I was a tired woman, yes, but not defeated. Cora didn't break me, she just woke me up. And from now on, the role of the silent mother was over. I wasn't going to scream, I wasn't going to humiliate her. I was going to do something much worse for her ego. I was going to disappear and leave her alone with the void she thought was replaceable. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw the glass, I didn't cry in public, I didn't scream at Cora that she had broken my heart. I simply got up from my chair, dried my palms on my skirt, smoothed the hem as if I were also smoothing my thoughts, and walked towards the house. No one noticed. Not a, "Where are you going, Izolda?" or a, "Mom, are you okay?" They were busy taking pictures with a mural of phrases like, "You're light, love your process." How ironic. No one sees when a light goes out. I entered through the side door of the kitchen, the one that opens right into the main hallway. I tiptoed, as if interrupting something sacred. Everything was perfectly tidy, as I always kept it. Even the vase with my hydrangeas was still in its place. I climbed the stairs slowly, one step at a time. Each step was harder than the last, not because of my hip, but because of the weight on my soul. It hurt, of course it hurt, but it was a different kind of pain, not sharp. It was the kind of pain that only comes when you realize that everything you thought was secure is no longer so. I stopped in front of the hallway mirror, the one with the aged wooden frame carved with vine leaves. I had cleaned it so many times that it still shone despite its years. There I was, Izolda Vidal, 80 years old, widow, retired teacher, owner of a gaze that did not tremble. I looked myself in the eyes and said softly, "No more." 2 words. 2 words that tasted like a limit, a boundary drawn with dignity. It wasn't a sad goodbye, it was a "this is where it ends." I went into the guest room, closed the door, took off my shoes, sat on the bed, and let the silence do its work. Outside, the applause, the lights, the cameras continued. Inside, just me and my breath, rhythmic, slow, steady. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted space to think, to process, to remember who I was before I became Cora's mom. I took off the locket, opened it, and looked at the photo. Cora as a child, in her floral dress with paint-stained fingers. I told the portrait. I swear I tried everything. A single tear fell. Just one. It was enough, because I wasn't crying for what I had lost. I was crying for what I had refused to see for years, for having grown accustomed to crumbs of affection, for having confused exposure with love. I sat there for a while. I let the afternoon pass, let the noise die down. And when night came, I turned on the table lamp, took out a sheet of paper, and began to write. Not a letter, a plan. Because if Cora had built a narrative in which I was a nuisance, I was going to write a different story, my own. And this time, not even the best filter in the world could erase it. That night, I slept little. The hallway clock marked each hour with a soft click. At 2 a.m., I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself questions I never wanted to formulate. Did she always despise me, or did I allow it without realizing it? I remembered so many moments, too many. Like when she was a teenager and burst into tears because a friend told her she was intense like her mom. Or when she asked me not to attend her first public talk. "It's just that I get more nervous if you're in the audience, Mom." Every time she pushed me to the margins, I stepped back. Out of love, of course. For fear of overshadowing her, for believing that was how I gave her wings. But what kind of wings grow by crushing the roots? The truth is, without realizing it, I trained her to ignore me. I congratulated her when she succeeded without inviting me. I consoled her when she blamed me for her failures. I protected her even from herself. And so, step by step, I became invisible. Not suddenly, not like in fairy tales, but through thousands of small acts of self-effacement. And the most terrible part of all is that I did it with love. A misunderstood love, the kind that gives everything, justifies everything, excuses everything. But now I see it. That kind of love doesn't nurture, it suffocates. I sat in the desk chair. I looked at the walls. Family photographs hung in a multiple frame. Cora at her graduation, Cora with her daughter, Cora cutting the ribbon at her first wellness center. I wasn't in any of them. Instead, on the desk, there was still the card Faye wrote me a year ago. "Thank you for teaching me to look slowly, Grandma." There was my real legacy. It wasn't my daughter, it was my granddaughter. It was Rowena. It was every one of my former students who wrote to me at Christmas to tell me they still painted. The lamp's light cast my shadow on the floor. A firm, complete silhouette. For the first time in years, I didn't see myself as the mom of, I saw myself as Izolda, the woman who withstood internal and external wars, who raised a child alone, who sold her ring out of faith, who now knew that love is not measured in applause, nor in social media mentions, nor in prepared speeches. It is measured in respect. And I was no longer receiving any. But that could change. Cora thought she knew me, that my silence was resignation, but she confused love with weakness, confused patience with submission. And that was her biggest mistake, because now that I had reconnected with my own voice, I never intended to silence it again. I woke before the sun. The blue light of dawn filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows on the antique furniture. I sat on the edge of the bed and carefully smoothed the knitted bedspread I made 20 years ago, one of the few things that still bear my embroidered name. And then I knew. Everything I felt had a name. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger. It was clarity. Cora only loved me as long as she could show me off. As long as I was useful, convenient, a good story to tell in interviews. The resilient mother, the dignified widow, the retired teacher who still inspires. That's what I was, a trophy mother. I saw it as clearly as if someone had said it out loud. The affection she gave me wasn't free. It came with small, disguised conditions. Only come with me if you're well-dressed. Please don't mention your pension at the talk. Don't talk so much about Dad. It brings down the energy. Once, at a wellness event for older women, she introduced me as her first teacher of light, and then added, "And now she learns from me, right, Mom?" I laughed. I nodded. I felt small. I didn't need her to give me credit, but I did need her to see me. And Cora didn't see me. Not as I am, only how I look, how I appear in photos, how I speak in public, how I fit into her narrative. I got up, looked at myself in the desk mirror. There was Izolda, the real woman. Dark circles, of course. Hands stained by years in paint. Gray hair gathered unpretentiously. But the eyes still had life. And that was more than I could say for many of the people around me. I went back to the locket. I opened it. Inside, the photo of Cora as a child. "I don't know where I lost you," I whispered to it. "But I'm not going to lose myself too." At that moment, I decided that silence was not enough, that it was no longer enough to distance myself internally. I had to start acting. Not to get revenge, but to repair. Because if art had taught me anything, it was this. When a work of art breaks, it is not always discarded. Sometimes it is rebuilt in another form, more honest, more firm. And that's what I was going to do with my life. Cora could keep her followers, her cameras, her speeches. I was going to keep my dignity and something more, the power to decide who I let into my world and whose door I close with the same elegance with which I opened it. Not all wounds need bandages. Some just need someone to tell you, you're not crazy. I saw it too. Rowena appeared late in the afternoon. No one announced her or asked for permission. She simply walked in through the kitchen door, as she has for the last 30 years. I met her at the municipal library's book club. Years later, she was the only one who stayed to help me clean up after Vincent's funeral, always with her big bag, her lavender perfume, and her gaze as sharp as a kitchen knife. "You look pale," she said, looking me up and down, straight to the point. "Did they give you chia juice and quantum energy again?" I let out a laugh. Not because of the joke, but because only she could say something like that in the midst of chaos. "I saw the video Cora posted this morning," she continued. "The one with the forced laugh. Where she calls you my wise lady." I nodded. I wasn't even surprised anymore. Rowena sat across from me, took a small cloth bag from her purse, and handed me a lemon cookie. The kind you like, with grated zest. Not those oatmeal ones that taste like regret. Thank you, I said, biting into it slowly. We sat in silence for a few seconds, the kind that isn't uncomfortable, the kind that is only shared between friends. I heard her, I said finally. In the kitchen. Saying she uses me for her image. That I make her sick. Rowena didn't feign surprise, she just pressed her lips together. I always thought there was something in her eyes. It's not anger, Izolda, it's contempt. And that's worse. I looked at her. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to show the trembling in my fingers. What did I do wrong, Rowena? Where did I go wrong? She leaned towards me, touched my hand firmly. Loving her more than you loved yourself. That was all. And it's not a crime, it's a risk. I swallowed. The chamomile tea was getting cold on the table. I don't know if I can stay here anymore, in this house, in this story. Then get out of it, she said without hesitation. But don't run away. Decide, plan. And how do you start? Rowena stood up, went to her bag, and took out a card. She slid it across the table. Caspian, lawyer. A former student of yours, by the way. He once told me he never would have studied law if you hadn't made him Red Escher. Caspian W. The very same. He has his own firm now, specializing in inheritance, wills, and elegant justice. I looked at her, dumbfounded. Did you set all this up? I only observed. You're the one who decided that enough is enough. I took the card, turned it over in my fingers. I felt the trembling subside. Rowena, do you think it's too late to get something back? She looked at me as if she couldn't believe I was still asking that question. Izolda Vidal. You're not broken, you're tired. And tiredness can be cured. Dignity cannot. That night I slept with company, not someone in the bed, but something stronger, the certainty that I still had allies and that, with the right person by your side, even the quietest plan can change everything. Caspian arrived the next day, punctual as always. More than 20 years had passed since he left my classroom. He was one of those kids who didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. He used to stay after class, asking me questions about impossible perspectives and invisible lines. Now he had the same serious air, but with an expensive suit and thick-framed glasses. Mrs. Vidal, he said as he entered. It's always an honor. It's Izolda, Caspian. And today, more than ever, I don't want to be treated like a relic. He smiled. I offered him jasmine tea and lemon cookies. He didn't touch them. He took out his briefcase, opened it, and got to work. Rowena gave me a general idea. Would you like to tell me what you have in mind? I took my time. I told him everything without embellishment, without drama, with the firm voice of someone who will no longer be silent. I told him about the sold ring, the slights, the video, the kitchen conversation, every crack that Cora had cleverly disguised. Caspian said nothing for a long time, just nodded, took notes, and looked at me with respect. Whatever you want to do, we'll do it, he said at the end. But I want to be sure this isn't on impulse, that you're ready to close doors. It's not impulse, Caspian. It's a response. And yes, I'm ready. Then he drafted the new will, line by line. All my inheritance, my house, my accounts, my signed paintings, even the rights to my published works, would be transferred to an art foundation in my name, Canvas Roots, dedicated to providing scholarships for older women who wanted to learn art. And Cora, he asked, pen at the ready. Nothing, I replied. Not a plant. Not a cup. Not an apology. He paused. And your granddaughter? That made me hesitate. To Faye, I leave my books and the locket. The rest, she can discover on her own. If she ever asks about me, I want her to have something real in her hands. Caspian signed the documents. He passed them to me. I signed too. As of today, he said, this has legal force. And if anyone wants to contest it, they will be met with my signature. Do you think she'll dare? I don't know, he said. But it doesn't matter. Now, you're the one writing the story. He left shortly after, with his briefcase and an expression mixed with pride and astonishment. I was left alone, looking at the copy of the will on the table. There was my name in bold. Not as Cora's mom, not as Faye's grandma. Just Izolda Vidal. I smiled, a different kind of smile. Not of revenge, but of justice. Because after a lifetime of painting for others, I had finally signed my bravest work. The envelope arrived on a Monday morning, a certified delivery. Thick paper, a golden seal. Caspian didn't skimp on the details. To me, it seemed perfect, an elegant touch for a message that was, deep down, a bombshell. Cora opened it in front of me, not because I asked her to, but because she couldn't imagine it was of any importance. She thought it was another routine document, maybe something about the house, some authorization. The first thing that changed was her expression. She was reading aloud for her assistants. Updated will. Canvas Roots Foundation, entirety of the assets. What is this, Mom? I didn't answer. Are you cutting me out? Out of everything. A hush fell. Cora's scream shattered it. All this over a social media joke? You're destroying everything. Paper trembling, she accused me of ruining her legacy. I rose, smoothed my skirt. I'm protecting my dignity, something you disregarded. I was your foundation. Not true, she choked. I respected you. Respect? Insults? Exploitation. Faye confirmed Cora's actions. I grabbed my bag, locket visible. This isn't revenge, it's truth. I left Cora to the echo of loss. The party continued, Cora celebrating my rebirth with forced cheer. I arrived, dark dress signaling a lecture. Cora's smile faltered. Mom, a few words? Yes. Silence. I was a useful image, but today I demand unfiltered respect. Cora tried to interrupt. Some doors need closing. Dignity suffices. From today, I am Izolda Vidal. That is enough. Mic drop. I left, shedding the superfluous. Victory. The house was silent. Upstairs, I left Faye a letter and the locket with Cora's portrait. Dearest Faye, I choose my path. Inherit strength, not hatred. Question, create, speak. Guard your story. If in doubt, paint. I'll be there. Love. Izolda. I left with a suitcase, sketchbook, Rowena scarf, and the residency address. Relief. I departed, finding myself